Hi everybody, this is a video 6 for the Diamond DA40 next generation, and again looking at the X-Touch Mini, and this is going to be a quick run through the LED script that I use to program the lights that come up on the my X-Touch Mini. So if we just have a quick look at that, if we go to our flight deck and bring in a slightly larger version of my actual Stream Deck, it's these buttons here. They've got lights on them. They flash when you touch them, but we can't control them from programming because they're MIDI commands that we can send to it. I'm not going to spend ages on the MIDI command structure. I've done that in other videos, but I'll just talk you through this layout here. Just a point of clarification, there's no concept of layer A or layer B for these. It doesn't matter what layer we're in, we can only talk to each individual bulb, and we can't tell programmatically which layer we're in. We've got no access to that. So we have to make a design decision whether we want to indicate the position of, say, our light switches or our autopilot status, and it's one or the other, but you can't do both. So it doesn't matter if I turn that to bank B, layer B, it's not going to make any difference at all. So I've decided that I'm going to allocate my lights to the autopilot mode, because I can see on my Stream Deck whether landing lights and things are on or off. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to program these lights here. So for instance, if I put it into heading hold mode, you can probably see the heading hold mode is lit up, and the flight director, because it needs a flight director for that to work, to do the heading hold, and I can turn that off, and I can turn off the flight director. And you can see on here the modes that it's gone into. So obviously if I press heading hold, heading comes up here. If I put nav, to reflect that it's nav. If it's if I want to change the CDI here, I can change that to GPS, and that reflects that it's GPS. So there's no different control here. You're just telling it what's driving the navigation, whether it's coming from your GPS unit or coming from your radio navigation. So that's all we're doing there with that. Okay, let's put it back to nav so we know where we are. So VOR1. So we could take it a heading mode and have it in nav mode for our heading. Approach mode, you can see there it's looking for a VOR, and it's looking for a glide slope, so we're in approach mode. So that's what we're trying to do, is get the lights to switch on and off. What I've done with this one here, the flight level control, I've set here that we want to get to 3,000 feet, and we'll put it into flight level control, and I have that light flashing at me to tell me that it's in a temporary mode. It's in flight level control, and when we get to the altitude, that will switch off, and it will change to here to say that we've captured the altitude. And I'll do the same with vertical speed as well. So again, it's a temporary mode. We're in vertical speed mode. We're climbing or descending, and when it reaches the desired altitude, that will become a steady light. This will switch off, and it will tell me that we are holding the altitude. If I just press altitude hold, it will say it's holding whatever our current altitude is. So that's now a steady light, and it says that here we're at 0 feet and we're holding it at 0 feet. So that's how I got that set. VNav does nothing. I haven't programmed it because it doesn't actually do anything at the moment. Back course does work, and it's also part of the approach mode, so we have to be in approach mode to do a back course, as far as I can work out. So that when you turn back course on, it turns on the approach mode. Okay, so those ones are programmed, and these ones here. Now the numbering of the LEDs is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up to 15. Okay, so it starts at 0, there are 16 of them, but it goes up to 15. So they're the LEDs that we can control there. And if I bring up my inevitable PowerPoint, I will talk you through a bit of the structure of the programming. Okay, so It's multiple lines, but they're very much the same structure. So if you forget your head around the structure here, and then the rest of them will make sense. So this checks here if the autopilot master is off. So it's checking if these two are both 0. If that's a 0 and that's a 0, it means the autopilot is off. So what we do is we're going to send to bulb 0, which is this one here. So let's move this out of the way so you can see what we're doing. There we are. Go through it again. Autopilot master is checking the value of that against this. If these are both 0, if they're both equal, if that's true, then we're going to send a 0 to this location. And if I read it backwards, it's bulb 0, channel 1. We always transmit on channel 1 for the general purpose MIDI. We're going to send a note on command. So we're sending a note on command over channel 1 to bulb number 0, and it's a 0 that we're sending. And this bit here, MIDI 7, that's the MIDI device. So we're sending over MIDI to number 7. So you need to be able to check here what your MIDI device is. Okay, so if we ask it to show the MIDI devices, I'm receiving from my X-Touch Mini on device number 2, but you can see here it's saying it's number 7. It may not be 7 for yours. Mine's 7 because I've got a number of music devices, MIDI devices plugged into it. Some of them are not switched on, so they're not active at the moment. So my other devices, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are switched off at the moment, so you won't see those. But there's my X-Touch Mini is switched on at the moment. So there it is, ID 7. So you need to check that. Yours may vary, and it may change if you plug and unplug and install other MIDI devices. So if your lights don't work, you may need to check on that to see if that ID number has changed. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And of course you have to have your MIDI enabled, otherwise it won't work anyway. So there's my first line of script. If that's off, send an off command over MIDI to device number 7, send a note on command, even though it's an off, but it's called a note on command, over channel 1 to bulb 0. If it's on, else, so that's the else bit. If it's off, do that. If it's on, do this. Send a 1 to it. So a 1 to the same location, and that will switch it on. So if I press on my autopilot now, you should see the autopilot light comes up, and if you look in here, you'll see the autopilot light is on. Now we do have a slight glitch that if I turn the autopilot off here, I can hear over my headphones. I'm not recording the desktop sound, but I can hear that it has switched that off, and I can turn off my flight director, I think now. Yep, but that doesn't go away for some reason. We can't make that go away. If I press on the autopilot here, that switched it back on again, and that switched it off again. So the soft switch here does something different. We're not quite sure what it is, but if I turn off now my flight director, it goes away. So I can guarantee the autopilot does go off, and the light goes off here, and we've got full control of the aircraft. So it's just a graphic thing here that happens. Okay, so back to my PowerPoint. So that's the structure. Do a check on a function. If it's off, send a 0 to the place, to the bulb. If it's on, send a 1 to turn it on. So the next one is the autopilot heading hold, or heading lock as they've got it written. If it's off, send a 0 to, and see everything else is the same. It's MIDI device number 7. We're sending a note on over channel 1, and this time it's to bulb number 1. So we're going to send an off to bulb number 1. If not, we will send a 1 to bulb number 1 and turn that bulb on. So if we do the heading hold, that comes on, turn it off, it goes off. Next one is the autopilot nav1 lock, and it's really just checking that you've got the nav button pressed there, and if it's 0, turn it off. Again, we're now sending it to bulb 2, so that's 0, 1, bulb number 2, and we'll turn that off. If not, we'll turn it on. If it's not off, it must be on, so we'll send a 1 to it. so we're sending to bulb 2. This one's checking the approach mode. Again, if it's 0, send a 0, and this time I'm sending it to bulb number 3. If not, send a 1 to bulb number 3, so that turns that one on. I don't do anything for this one, that's just for me to press to put it into FLC mode and set the airspeed, desired airspeed, to something sensible, and it in fact sends it to 70, but I don't have a light for that one. So my next light is to this one here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, bulb number 5. This is checking whether it's in flight level change mode and checking if it's off. If it's off, just send a 0 to it. So we're sending a 0 to bulb number 5. If not, I send a 2 to that one, because that flashes at me, so I can look and see quite quickly that it's in transit, it's in change mode. It's going to change the flight level, and that's a temporary position until we actually reach the desired altitude. So if I go to my flight deck, if I pump in a number here, let's put in 3000, and if I wanted to do a flight level change, that bulb flashes and it becomes steady when I reach the actual altitude, the desired altitude, so that will go off and this will come on. Excuse me, I've got a really bad cough today. Okay, so that I'm not making it flash by anything clever other than sending 2 to it. 2 is the command to flash. So that's all I do there. Next one along is the flight director active, and that's this one here, so that's bulb number 8. It's exactly the same structure. Is my altitude locked? Am I holding altitude? If I'm not holding it, then send a 0, else send a 1. Okay, so the next one along is are we in back course mode, and if it's a 0, send a 0. If not, send a 1 to it. So that's bulb number 8, 9, 10, 11, the back course. Nothing for this one, so I'm doing the same flashing trick for my vertical speed ascent or descent. So if I set the vertical speed that I want to achieve, it will flash until it's hit the altitude. Once the altitude is captured, this will switch off and it will switch on the altitude lock. That will automatically switch on. So that's my entire script. A bit of copying, bit of pasting, and it doesn't take very long to write one of those up. It's written here, so on the scripting area here, use the RPN scripts editor, and if you manage the script group, you can make yourself a group like my scripts. A script group is a folder essentially. So you type it in here, click add, and you can add a folder to put things in. And so my scripts, I've got quite a few that I've been playing around with. Some of them are test ones that really ought to be deleted because they don't work anymore. But I've got different LED scripts for different layouts here, and the one I'm using here is this one here, my script for the DA40 autopilot, and that's that one there. So there's my script all tidied in. So you see it's in my scripts, and it's the DAP. So if it's the first one you've written, first version you've written for this, save it as new, and then when you make any changes to it, just update it. What we then need to do is to tell the script to run. Most scripts run when you press a button, either on your Stream Deck or on your X-Touch Mini. That would, if you've got a script, it will run the script. But we want the script to run in the background all the time, just checking this situation. So it's done here. We assign an aircraft automated script. So it's just specifically for this aircraft, not global. It's specifically for this aircraft here. So in there we add that script. So we would find it's in here. We'd say it's in my scripts, and you would find which one you want to use and add it here. You can change, it's obviously repeating, and we can change how often it runs. So you can make it run every half a second or something like that. Should be enough. I don't quite know why it always resets itself back to 100, but if I update that, that should have changed it. Now I close. But if I go back into that again, the scripting, aircraft automated scripts, you'll see that it's still saying it's 100, but I'm sure that it's set for half a second. But anyway, I've done what I can to make it work. Okay, so that's how you write, save, and then allocate the script to your specific aircraft. And I hope that MIDI makes sense to you. Watch out for that greater than. It doesn't mean greater than, it means sending it to the MIDI. That's what that means. We're sending it into the MIDI. It's not if without that we'll be trying to read something. That means it's an action to send it. So I hope that makes sense. That's how the MIDI is set up, so that we can control the LED. Let's turn that flight director off. I'm pretty happy with it. It works quite well. Okay, so I think that's everything I need to do to tell you how it's set up. I think the next thing to do is to have a couple of test flights and see it all in operation. So that will be the next video after this one. Okay, so let's take it back to, whoops, let's take it back to the flight deck. In fact, what I want to do is to take it back to here, so you can see the entire script again, so you can see it without any interruption. So these could be ones if you're happy with them to be steady. If you want them to flash just so they catch your eye, it's put a 2 rather than a 1. That's the only thing that I may have covered with the overlay. So when it's in flight level change mode, I make it flash, or if it's going on the vertical speed mode, I have it flashing at me, and it's steady if we're actually got to the correct height. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you, hope that works for you. Just checking those buttons for myself. Alt is button number 9. There's the 9, altitude lock. If it's reached the altitude lock, then it sends a 1. If it's in vertical, it says vertical hold mode, but it's not, it's vertical speed mode is what it actually is, but that we have to use the what they've designated it as. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Best of luck with getting your MIDI lights sorted out.